When my daughter Amara called to invite me on a family trip to Lagos, Nigeria, my heart jumped with joy. Maybe this was finally my chance to build a real relationship with her husband, Chidi, who had kept me at arm's length for the 7 years they'd been married. The 6-hour flight from Nairobi to Lagos was filled with Amara and Chidi discussing business meetings, luxury shopping on Victoria Island, and expensive restaurants, as if I wasn't sitting right next to them. Every time I tried to join the conversation, asking about my grandson or suggesting we visit the National Museum together, Chidi would give me a one-word answer, and Amara would change the subject. I should have seen the warning signs, but I wanted so desperately to be close to my only daughter that I ignored them all. The Grand Heritage Hotel in Lagos was one of my proudest achievements, though my family knew nothing about it. After my husband died, when Amara was just 10, I built my textile business from absolutely nothing. I started with a small market stall, working from dawn until midnight, sewing clothes by hand and selling them door to door. Slowly, I grew it into a chain of 15 boutique hotels and textile factories across 4 African countries. I always kept my business life separate from my family, wanting Amara to love me for who I was as her mother, not for what I owned. I never wanted money to come between us or make her feel obligated to love me. Arriving at the hotel's grand entrance, I felt that familiar pride as I saw the beautiful gardens and the smartly dressed staff greeting guests. It had taken me 4 years to acquire the Grand Heritage and another 3 to renovate it to perfection. Every detail, from the hand-carved wooden doors to the traditional African artwork on the walls, was my personal choice. Chidi handed the valet's car keys while Amara adjusted her expensive head wrap, her makeup flawless. She was stunning at 38 years old, a successful lawyer who had married Chidi when he was 52, 15 years her senior. He was a businessman who never let anyone forget how wealthy he was. "Remember," Chidi told Amara as we walked toward the entrance, "I want the presidential suite. I don't care if they say it's booked. Just handle it." Amara nodded quickly. It still hurt me to see how much my confident, educated daughter deferred to her husband. The strong girl I had raised alone had become a woman who couldn't make decisions without her husband's approval. We entered the elegant lobby, and I couldn't help but smile at the familiar sounds of activity. Ngozi, the guest relations manager, looked up and her eyes went wide when she saw me, but I shook my head slightly. I wasn't ready for them to know who I really was. "Good afternoon," Ngozi said warmly but professionally. "Welcome to the Grand Heritage Hotel. How may I assist you?" "Reservation under Okonkwo," Chidi replied. "We should have the presidential suite." Ngozi's fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. "I have your reservation here, Mr. Okonkwo. You're confirmed for our executive suite, but the presidential suite is occupied for your entire stay." I watched Chidi's face harden, his jaw clenching. "That's completely unacceptable," he snapped. "Do you know who I am? I specifically requested the presidential suite when we made this booking." Ngozi remained calm, though I could see her hands tense slightly. "I sincerely apologize for any confusion, sir. The executive suite is truly beautiful, and it includes a private terrace overlooking the lagoon." "I don't want to hear about some second-class room," Chidi interrupted, his voice rising enough that other guests stopped to look. "I want the presidential suite, and I want it immediately." I stepped forward, hoping to calm things down. "Chidi, maybe we could." Before I could finish, he turned on me, his face twisted with anger. "Don't you dare open your mouth," he shouted, his voice echoing through the marble lobby. Then he turned to Ngozi. "You there, whatever your name is. Just ignore whatever this old woman says. She's nobody important. She's just the maid we brought to watch our son." The conversations in the lobby stopped completely. My face burned with shame as humiliation washed over me. But Chidi wasn't finished. "Don't listen to the old woman," he barked, pointing at me like I was something dirty. "She's just the help, the babysitter. Don't waste your time on her." I stood there frozen, my throat tight, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would break through my chest. In my 68 years, no one had ever spoken to me with such complete disrespect, especially not in front of strangers. But what happened next broke my heart completely. Amara, my daughter, the child I had sacrificed everything for, threw her head back and laughed. Not an uncomfortable laugh, but genuine amusement, as if watching her husband humiliate her mother in public was entertaining. "Oh, Chitty," she said, wiping her eyes. "You're so bad. But you're right. Mama, just sit down somewhere and let us handle this, okay?" The betrayal hit me like a physical punch. This was my daughter, the daughter I had raised alone, working 3 jobs to pay for her education, sacrificing my own needs so she could have the best. I had worked myself nearly to death to give her a good life, and she was laughing at my humiliation. Ngozi's face had gone pale, shock and sympathy in her eyes. Around the lobby, I heard whispers and saw people pointing. Some were holding up their phones, recording every second of this nightmare. "Ma'am," Ngozi said softly, her voice kind but professional. "Perhaps you'd like to wait in our garden lounge while we sort out the room arrangements." Before I could answer, Chitty let out a loud, dramatic sigh. "Yes, take the old woman somewhere she won't embarrass us anymore. And make sure someone watches her. She tends to wander off and get confused." Amara laughed again. Strangers were staring, and I felt my heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. I wanted to disappear, to run from this beautiful lobby I had designed myself, from my cruel son-in-law, from my mocking daughter, and never return. But something inside me, the last piece of the strength that had built this empire, kept me standing. I met Ngozi's eyes. She looked devastated. She knew exactly who I was. She knew that with one word from me, she could have Chitty and Amara removed from the property so fast their expensive shoes wouldn't touch the ground. But I stayed silent. I picked up my small bag and walked to the elevator, my back straight despite the crushing weight of shame. Behind me, Chitty was still yelling at Ngozi about the presidential suite, his voice thick with the entitlement of someone who had inherited everything and earned nothing. When the elevator doors closed, I caught Ngozi's "I won last time." She gave me a small nod, a silent message that she understood, that she was sorry, and that she was waiting for my instructions. I had built this empire from nothing, employing over 400 people across my businesses. I was respected in business circles, invited to speak at conferences, known for my fairness and integrity. But in that lobby, I was just a pathetic old woman being yelled at by her son-in-law while her daughter laughed. As the elevator rose to the 8th floor, each passing number stirred something inside me. The pain was still sharp and deep, but another feeling began to grow alongside it: determination. The next morning, I woke up in what should have been paradise but felt like prison. My room overlooked the Atlantic Ocean, with waves crashing against Tarqua Bay Beach. The sunrise painted the sky orange and purple, colors that would normally fill me with peace, but I felt hollow inside. I had barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Chitty's mocking voice. "She's just the maid." Amara's laughter played over and over in my head, and I wondered if I had failed as a mother. But deep down, I knew the real problem wasn't me. The truth was that my own family treated me like I was worthless. A knock on the door broke through my thoughts. When I opened it, Amara stood in the hallway wearing an expensive dress. She looked annoyed but showed no sign of regret. "Mama, we're going for breakfast. Chitty wants you to watch Obina at the pool afterward so we can meet some business associates." "No, good morning." "No, how did you sleep?" Not even a word about what had happened in the lobby. Just another order disguised as a request. "Amara," I said quietly, "about last night." She waved her hand dismissively. "Mama, please don't make a big deal out of nothing." Chitty was just stressed about the room. You know how he gets when things don't go his way. "Nothing?" That's what she called her husband publicly humiliating me? He called me a maid, Amara. He screamed at me in front of all those people. She shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. He didn't mean it literally. That's just Chitty being dramatic. Can we please not talk about it? We're supposed to be on holiday. I looked at her, searching for the girl I once knew. The little girl who would climb into my bed during thunderstorms, who would pick flowers and put them in my hair, who once told me I was the bravest woman in the world. That girl was gone, replaced by a 38-year-old woman who chose her husband's comfort over her mother's dignity. Okay, I said, the word tasting bitter. I'll watch Obina. Her relief was obvious. Perfect. We probably won't be back until evening. Business meetings first, then lunch with potential investors, maybe some shopping afterward. That's fine, right?
Of course it wasn't fine.
I had imagined this trip as family time, getting to know my 6-year-old grandson, feeling like I belonged. Instead, I was being used as an unpaid nanny. But I nodded. Saying no would only cause a scene, and I had learned long ago that keeping the peace seemed more important than speaking up. The hotel restaurant was filled with tourists enjoying their meals. Chitty had somehow secured the best table on the terrace, and he was already snapping his fingers at the staff like they were servants. I want fresh squeezed orange juice, not that cheap packaged nonsense, he told our waiter, a young man named Emeka, whom I remembered hiring 2 years ago. And make sure that omelette is cooked exactly right. Not too soft, not too dry. I could see Emeka trying to maintain his composure, but the frustration in his eyes gave him away. I had trained my staff to provide excellent service, but Chitty was testing even their patience. My grandson Obina was sitting silently at the table, eyes fixed on his tablet. He barely looked up when I approached. "Good morning, my dear," I said to Obina, reaching out to touch his shoulder. But Chitty's hand shot out, stopping me. "Don't touch him when he's concentrating. He's watching an educational video, and I don't want him distracted." I pulled my hand back as if I'd been burned. Obina didn't even acknowledge me. "Obina, greet your grandmother," Amara said half-heartedly. "Good morning," he mumbled without looking up. I sat in the only remaining chair, the one facing away from the ocean view. Chitty and Amara had made sure the best seats were for them, leaving me the worst position, as if I were an afterthought. "Listen carefully," Chitty said without looking at me. "After breakfast, you'll take Obina to the pool. Make sure you apply sunscreen every hour. If he gets sunburned, there will be consequences." I nodded, swallowing the words I wanted to say. "And keep him away from the deep end. Don't let him eat junk food from the pool bar. Don't let him run around too much. And if anything happens, anything at all, call me immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself." Each order felt like a small cut, another reminder that they didn't trust me to care for my own grandson without supervision. "How long will you be gone?" I asked. Chitty finally looked at me, his gaze cold. "As long as we need to be. This is our trip, not yours. You're here to help, nothing more." Amara stayed silent, staring at her phone, completely disconnected. I wondered when she had become the kind of woman who would let her husband treat her mother like hired help. After breakfast, I spent the day at the pool with Obina, trying to start conversations while he remained glued to his tablet. Around us, other families laughed and played together. We looked like strangers forced to share space. "Grandma," Obina said suddenly, and my heart lifted, hoping he wanted to talk. "Yes, my dear? Papa says you used to be a maid for rich people. Is that true?" The question felt like a slap. I had never been anyone's maid. I had built my own business empire from scratch, created hundreds of jobs, earned respect in a male-dominated industry. And still, in Chitty's twisted version of my life, I was nothing but a servant. "No, sweetheart," I said gently. "I'm a businesswoman. I own hotels and factories." Obina looked up from his tablet for the first time. "Papa says you make up stories about being rich because you're ashamed of being poor." The cruelty of his words stole my breath. Chitty hadn't just humiliated me in public. He had been poisoning my grandson against me, filling his head with lies so he would see me as a pathetic, delusional woman. "Your grandmother is not poor, and she doesn't lie," I said firmly. Obina shrugged. "That's what Papa says. He says you live in a small flat and pretend you're important to feel better about yourself. In reality, I owned a penthouse in Nairobi worth more than most people earn in their entire lives. But my grandson thought I was a sad old woman living in poverty and lying about my accomplishments. For the next 6 hours, I sat by that pool watching a child who barely acknowledged me while his parents enjoyed themselves at my expense. Other guests would chat with me occasionally, and I would give polite, brief responses while feeling emptier with each passing minute. When Chitty and Amara finally returned in the evening, they were glowing from their successful day. Amara's hair was freshly styled, her makeup perfect. They looked like people who had spent the day being pampered, which they had at a spa I owned with services I was ultimately paying for. "How was Obina?" Amara asked without looking up from her phone. "He was fine," I replied. What else could I say? That he thought I was a liar and a servant? That his father had deliberately destroyed any chance of a real connection between us? "Good," Chitty said dismissively. "You'll watch him again tomorrow. We have a golf tournament in the morning and lunch with some investors." I watched my daughter nod along to his plans without asking if I minded, without considering that maybe I wanted to spend my holiday doing something other than free childcare. That night, sitting alone in my room overlooking the ocean I had worked so hard to make beautiful, I finally saw the truth. This wasn't a family holiday. It was a business arrangement where I had been assigned the role of the help, except instead of being paid, I was paying for the privilege of being treated like garbage. But as I sat in the darkness listening to the waves, something inside me started to shift. The pain was still there, deeper than ever, but it was joined by something else. Pure, cold anger. Anger at being taken for granted, at the lies, at being treated like I was nothing when I had built everything. Tomorrow, I decided, things were going to change. The third day started exactly like the previous two, with Chitty dictating my schedule, while Amara sat by nodding like an obedient assistant. This time they had planned a day trip to the Lekki Conservation Center, and I was to stay behind with Obina. "Make sure he eats lunch at exactly 1 p.m., Chitty said, checking his watch like a military commander. "Obina gets irritable when his schedule changes, so stick to the routine I've written down for you." I wanted to remind him that I had raised a child successfully, that I knew how to take care of children, but I'd learned that standing up for myself only led to longer lectures and more subtle insults. "We'll probably be back around 7, Amara added without meeting my eyes. "Maybe later if we decide to have dinner out there." As they prepared to leave, I overheard Chitty on the phone using that fake friendly tone he used when he wanted something from someone. "No, we can't meet for drinks tonight. We're stuck dealing with family obligations. I know it's annoying, but just a few more days. Trust me, once we sort everything out, we won't have to deal with this burden anymore." A chill ran down my spine. The way he said "sort everything out" didn't sound like he was just talking about the holiday ending. After they left, I took Obina to the hotel's children's program, an activity center I had designed myself to give families more flexibility. The counselors were wonderful with him, and for the first time since we'd arrived, I saw him smile and play with other children. With some time to myself, I decided to walk around my property. It had been years since I'd experienced my hotel as a guest rather than an owner, and I wanted to see how things really looked. That's when I overheard the conversation that changed everything. Walking past the poolside lounge, I recognized voices coming from one of the private cabanas. Chitty and Amara were supposed to be at the conservation center, but there they were, hidden behind white curtains, talking in hushed tones with another couple I didn't recognize. "The thing is," Chitty was saying, "she's getting old, and old people don't last forever, if you understand what I mean." A woman I didn't know laughed. "Chitty, you're terrible." "I'm just being realistic," Chitty replied. "Amara is her only child, so everything will come to us eventually. The question is just timing." My stomach dropped. I moved closer, hiding behind a large decorative plant. "And does her mother actually have anything worth inheriting?" an unfamiliar man asked. Amara mentioned she's quite poor. Then I heard my daughter's voice. The voice I had once trusted completely. "My mother? She's broke. She lives in a tiny flat in Nairobi, barely surviving on her late husband's small pension. I've been supporting her financially for years." The lies flowed from her mouth, so easily. I wondered how long she had been telling them. I owned a luxury penthouse, earned more each month from my businesses than most people made in a year. But in Amara's twisted version, I was a burden she generously supported. "That's why this trip is so frustrating," Chitty continued. "We have to drag her everywhere because she can't afford anything on her own. It's like having a pet you can't get rid of." The other woman made a sympathetic sound. "How awful for you both." And I suppose she expects you to care for her when she becomes truly dependent. Over my dead body, Chitty said with a harsh laugh. The moment she needs serious care, she's going into the cheapest government facility we can find. I'm not turning my house into a nursing home for some useless old woman. I leaned against the wall to steady myself. They weren't just talking about my natural death. They were planning to discard me the moment I became inconvenient. But Amara's next words shattered me completely. The funny thing is, she said, her voice filled with cruel amusement, she still thinks she's accomplished something. She tells these ridiculous stories about owning businesses and being successful. It's almost sad how delusional she's become. Dementia? The unknown man asked.
Possibly, Amara said.
Or maybe she's just desperate to believe her life mattered. Either way, it's embarrassing. Yesterday, she told Obina she owns hotels. Hotels. Can you imagine? They all laughed, and the sound cut through me like broken glass. Well, Chitty said, at least we won't have to put up with her crazy stories much longer. I give her maybe 5 years, possibly 10, and then we'll finally be free to live our lives without pretending we care about some useless old woman who never accomplished anything. I stood there behind that plant, feeling my entire world collapse. This wasn't just casual conversation about an inconvenient relative. This was my own daughter and her husband discussing my death as if it were a long-awaited relief. The best part, Chitty added, is that she's so desperate for our approval that she'll do anything we ask, like this trip. She actually thinks we invited her because we wanted her company. She has no idea we only brought her along to watch Obina while we network and enjoy ourselves. More laughter, more casual cruelty. Does she even contribute financially to anything? The other woman asked. Are you joking? Chitty scoffed. She's completely useless when it comes to money. I cover everything for her, her bills, her food, even this trip. She's nothing but a financial drain on our family. Another lie. For years, I had been secretly helping them financially. I had paid off Amara's law school loans, covered part of their house deposit, even funded Chitty's failed business ventures. The bank statements came to my address, and I paid them without complaint, thinking I was supporting my family. The only useful thing about having her around, Amara said, is that she's free childcare. She's so desperate for our love that she'll do whatever we ask. It's actually kind of pathetic. It really is, Chitty added. Watching her try so hard to make us like her, bringing Obina expensive gifts with money she doesn't even have. I stumbled backward, my hand covering my mouth to stop a sob from escaping. The lies were betrayal enough. But hearing them discuss my life as if it were a joke, a burden to be endured and then discarded, was a knife through my heart. This wasn't just about money or respect anymore. This was about complete lack of humanity. They weren't just taking my financial support. They were taking my dignity, my legacy, and turning it into something worthless and pathetic. My mind flashed back to that first evening in the lobby. I had been so filled with shame that I hadn't wanted to expose them. I had wanted to protect Amara from the embarrassment of her husband's behavior. But now I realized she was part of it. She had helped create this narrative. She was complicit in my humiliation, and she was comfortable with it. I had been so proud of my accomplishments, so proud of the life I had built for my family. But they had turned my success into a punchline. I was nothing more than an ATM, free babysitting, a pathetic old woman they couldn't wait to be rid of. I felt a new kind of anger building inside me. It wasn't the quick rage of before. It was cold, hard, and unshakable. They thought I was useless. They thought I was a joke. I would show them what this useless old woman could do. I pulled out my phone and called Ngozi. She answered immediately. "Ma'am, I'm so relieved you called," she said, her voice mixing concern with relief. "Is everything all right?" "Ngozi," I said, my voice steady and clear, "I need you to do something for me." I walked back to the children's center and collected Obina. He barely looked up from his coloring book as I took his hand. "Let's go, sweetheart," I said. "We're going on an adventure." He looked up at me with uncertain eyes. "Papa said I had to stay in the program until he came back." "Your papa was wrong," I said firmly. "Come with me." I took him to the beach, and for the first time, I put away my phone and my worries. We built elaborate sandcastles. We searched for shells and interesting stones. We ran along the water's edge, and I told him stories about when his mother was a little girl and we were happy together. For a moment, it felt like a real family holiday. But the knowledge of what was coming weighed heavily in my chest. That evening, Chitty and Amara returned, flushed from their day out and smelling of expensive wine. They walked into my room expecting to collect Obina and head to dinner. But I was standing in the doorway, blocking their entrance. "We're ready to go eat," Chitty said, not even looking at me, his eyes on Obina. "You can order room service for yourself." "I won't be ordering room service," I said, my voice as calm as still water. "And neither will you." Amara finally looked at me, irritation flickering in her eyes. "What are you talking about, Mama?" "I'm talking about the fact that you need to go to the front desk and book yourselves different rooms immediately. You'll be checking out in the morning." They stared at me, confusion spreading across their faces. "What are you saying?" Amara asked. "Don't play innocent," I said. "I overheard your conversation at the cabana. I know exactly what you've been saying about me." Chitty's face went from confusion to fury. "You were spying on us," he hissed. "You had no right." "I own this hotel, Chitty," I said, my voice rising with each word. "I have every right to be anywhere on this property, and what I want right now is for both of you to leave." I pulled an envelope from my bag and handed it to Amara. It contained copies of every financial transaction I had made on their behalf over the years. Her eyes widened as she looked at the numbers, seeing for the first time the full extent of my generosity and her lies. "You've been lying to me?" she asked, her voice shaking as she looked at her husband. "All this time." "She's the one lying," Chitty shouted. "She doesn't own this place. She's just some poor old woman who used to clean houses." Just then, Ngozi entered the room with 2 security guards. "I was informed there was a disturbance," she said, her eyes on me, her voice calm and professional. "Ngozi, tell them," Chitty screamed, pointing at me. "Tell them she doesn't own this hotel." Ngozi looked at me, and I gave her a small nod. "Mrs. Adebayo is not only the owner of this hotel," Ngozi said clearly. "She is the sole owner of all 15 Grand Heritage properties across East and West Africa. She is our founder, our CEO, and the reason any of us have jobs today." Chitty's face went white. He looked from Ngozi to me, his eyes darting with panic. Amara just stood there speechless, the documents in her hands proving every lie she had told. "What is the meaning of this?" Chitty finally managed to say. "It means," I said, my voice full of power and resolve, "that you will both be checking out first thing tomorrow morning, and you will be paying your own way. Every expense you've charged to your room, every meal, every spa treatment, every drink, every golf game, will be billed to your credit card." "You can't do this," Chitty yelled. "Oh, but I can," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "And I will." I turned to Amara, and my voice softened slightly. "And as for you, my daughter, you will no longer receive any financial support from me. The loan payments stop. The school fees stop. The house deposit I gave you, I want it repaid. You're on your own now." Amara's face crumbled. "Mama, please. We can talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about, Amara," I said. "You chose to laugh when your husband humiliated me. You chose to poison my grandson against me with lies. You chose to discuss my death as if it would be a relief. You made your choices. Now you live with the consequences." They looked at each other, their faces showing shock, betrayal, and the dawning realization that they had completely underestimated me. They had thought they had me exactly where they wanted me, but they had no idea that the useless old woman they mocked was the one who held all the power. That night, for the first time in years, I slept soundly. 2 years later. I'm writing this from my office overlooking the harbor in Mombasa, Kenya, where I just opened my 16th hotel. I wish I could tell you that Amara and I reconciled, that she apologized, and we rebuilt our relationship. But that's not what happened. After that night in Lagos, Amara called me exactly 3 times. The first time was 2 days later, begging me to reconsider, not because she was sorry, but because they couldn't afford their lifestyle without my help. I said no. The second time was 6 months later, when they were facing foreclosure on their house. She didn't apologize. She blamed me for being cruel and unforgiving. I said no again. The third time was on my birthday this year. She didn't wish me a happy birthday. She asked if I had gotten over myself yet, and if I was ready to stop being petty. I hung up. I won't lie and say it doesn't hurt. She's my only child, and Obinna is my only grandchild. There are nights when I look at old photographs and cry for the relationship we could have had. But I also know that I did the right thing. Some people will never respect you unless you demand it. Some people will take and take and take until you're empty and then resent you for having nothing left to give. I spent too many years making myself small so others could feel big. I spent too many years believing that love meant accepting disrespect and cruelty. I was wrong. Today, I'm surrounded by people who value me, my employees, my business partners, the friends I've made. I wake up every morning knowing I am respected and valued. I go to bed every night at peace with who I am. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. And sometimes, the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into. Chitty and Amara thought they were teaching me a lesson when they humiliated me in that hotel lobby. They were right about one thing. I did learn something that week. I learned that I am worth fighting for, even if I have to be the one doing the fighting. And that changed everything. Lessons I learned. 1. Silence enables abuse. For years, I stayed quiet to keep the peace. I thought if I just accepted the disrespect, if I just kept giving, eventually they would appreciate me. But silence doesn't create peace. It creates space for cruelty to grow. Speak up when you're being mistreated. Your voice matters. 2. Love should never cost you your dignity. Real love lifts you up. It doesn't tear you down, humiliate you, or make you feel worthless. If someone claims to love you while treating you with contempt, that's not love. That's manipulation. You deserve respect, even from family. Especially from family. 3. Don't hide your accomplishments to make others comfortable. I kept my success secret because I wanted my family to love me for who I was, not what I owned. But hiding who you truly are, your achievements, your strength, your value, doesn't create authentic relationships. It creates relationships based on false pretenses. Be proud of what you've built. If people can't celebrate your success, they don't deserve to be in your life. 4. You teach people how to treat you. Every time I accepted disrespect without consequences, I taught them that my boundaries didn't matter. Every time I paid their bills while they called me poor, I taught them that lies had no cost. Every time I smiled through humiliation, I taught them that my dignity was negotiable. It wasn't. And once I stopped accepting mistreatment, everything changed. 5. Being alone is better than being disrespected in company. I was terrified of losing my family, so I accepted whatever scraps of affection they offered. But the loneliest I ever felt was sitting in rooms full of family members who treated me like I was invisible. True loneliness isn't being alone. It's being surrounded by people who make you feel worthless. Choose solitude with dignity over company, with contempt. 6. Your children are watching. By allowing Chitty and Amara to treat me terribly, I was teaching Obinna that this was acceptable behavior. I was showing him that women, especially older women, deserve no respect. I was modeling dysfunction instead of dignity. Breaking that cycle, even though it cost me the relationship, was the most important thing I could have done for me and for him. 7. Self-respect is not selfishness. For so long, I believed that standing up for myself would make me selfish or difficult. I thought good mothers, good women, were supposed to accept everything with a smile. But there's nothing virtuous about allowing yourself to be abused. Self-respect isn't selfish, it's essential. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and allowing people to drain you completely helps no one. 8. It's never too late to reclaim your power. I was 68 years old when I finally stood up for myself. I had spent decades building a life, raising a child, creating businesses, but I still believed I had to accept disrespect from my family. The truth is, you're never too old, never too late to decide that you deserve better. Your age doesn't diminish your worth. Your past acceptance of mistreatment doesn't obligate you to continue accepting it. This story is based on real events, though names and details have been changed. I'm sharing it not for sympathy, but in the hope that someone reading this will recognize themselves in my story. Maybe you're the mother being taken for granted.